My parents stole my inheritance for my brother's failures, now they want me to go broke to save him again. I'm 32, a guy who thought his family, despite its flaws, had my back. But now I know better. I grew up in a pretty typical middle-class household. Nothing fancy, but we were comfortable. My parents were always strict about saving, always reminding me that family is everything. But there's something they left out. In our family, B was everything. B's my younger brother. He's 28, and to put it bluntly, he's a screw-up. Always has been. It didn't matter what he did. Wrecked his first car? It's just a car. Flunked out of college? He's finding his path. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one. The one who got good grades, went to college, got a stable job. I was proud of the life I'd built for myself. But it's like none of that ever mattered. It all came crashing down a couple of years ago. I was at work late one night when my phone rang. My mother, crying, saying B's business had collapsed. He'd opened a luxury car dealership after our parents helped him out with a huge investment. I didn't even know the full extent of it at the time. But I knew my brother. Flashy, impulsive, no sense of responsibility. It was only a matter of time before something like this happened. So I tried to stay calm, asked what they needed. We had to dip into some of your inheritance. My mother said, her voice cracking. What? My inheritance? I felt my stomach drop. She was talking about the trust fund my grandparents had set up when they passed away. One for me, one for B, equal shares. The plan had always been that the money was for when my parents passed, or if we really needed it. But now? They had just taken it? It was for B, she continued. His business needed help. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They stole my inheritance. Money meant for both of us, and just handed it to him without even telling me? Without even asking? You can't be serious, I said, my voice shaking with anger. How much did you take? Not all of it, she said quickly. Like that was supposed to make it better. Just enough to keep him afloat. But that wasn't the point. It wasn't about how much they took. It was about the fact that they'd done it behind my back. Like my future was just some afterthought compared to B's constant failures. I hung up the phone, unable to listen to her anymore. The next few weeks were brutal. I tried to wrap my head around it, tried to understand how my own parents could betray me like this. I confronted them a few times, but every conversation ended the same way. Excuses. He needed help, they'd say. You're doing fine on your own, but your brother's struggling. I lost count of how many times I heard the word struggling. Struggling? He wasn't struggling, he was failing. And they were enabling it. I tried to make them see how wrong it was, how unfair it was, but they were so deep in this delusion of helping family that they couldn't see the truth. And then there was B. No apology, no guilt. He didn't care. He had this smug attitude, like the world owed him everything. Come on, man, he'd say, like we were buddies or something. It's just money, you'll be fine. Just money? I snapped. That was my inheritance. My future. You can't just. It's not like you need it now, he cut me off, as if that justified everything. You've got a good job. I'm the one who's trying to make something happen here. I couldn't even respond to that. It was like talking to a wall that was somehow convinced it deserved everything it took from me. So I stopped trying. I distanced myself from all of them, hoping that maybe, eventually, they'd realize how badly they'd screwed up. But of course, things didn't go that way. About a month ago, B's business completely went under. No more pretending it was salvageable. The luxury cars were gone, the fancy condo was on the market, and the debts were piling up. And just like clockwork, my parents came crawling back to me. We need your help, my father said, sitting across from me at the dinner table, like he was asking me to pass the salt, not to bail out my brother's mess. What kind of help? I asked, already knowing where this was going. Well, my mother jumped in. We were thinking, you could take out a loan. I stared at her, not sure if I'd heard her right. A loan? For what? To help me pay off his debts, she said, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Just enough to get him back on his feet. You want me to take out a loan? After you already took my inheritance for him? Are you out of your minds? They both looked shocked, like I was the one being unreasonable. My father cleared his throat. Look, we know this has been hard on you, but your brother's in trouble. We all need to pitch in. Pitch in? I couldn't stop myself from laughing, a cold, bitter sound. You didn't ask me to pitch in when you took my inheritance. You just took it. And now you want me to take out a loan? For him? Are you serious right now? My mother tried to play the sympathy card. He's your brother. He's family. Family helps family. No, I said, standing up from the table. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't bail out one person at the expense of another. Family doesn't do what you've done. We didn't have a choice. My father shouted, his face turning red. You're fine. You've got a career, a steady income. B can fend for himself for once in his life. I yelled back. He's been handed everything, and every time he fails, you bail him out. Meanwhile, I've worked my ass off, and all I get is the scraps left after you're done cleaning up his messes. Why can't you just help him? My mother whispered, tears in her eyes now. But I wasn't falling for it this time. Because I've spent my whole life helping him, I said, my voice low and cold. I've done enough. You've done enough. If he hasn't learned by now, he never will. My father glared at me, his jaw clenched. Fine, he said. If that's how you feel, don't expect any part of the estate when we're gone. We'll leave everything to B. I stood there for a moment, stunned. But then the anger washed over me again, stronger this time. Keep it, I spat. Keep everything. I don't need it. I don't need any of this. And with that, I left. I haven't spoken to them since. I thought maybe, once the dust settled, they'd come around. Maybe they'd realize how screwed up all of this was, how they were destroying their relationship with me over B's endless string of failures. But no, they doubled down. A week after that dinner, I got an email from my father. Short, cold. We're disappointed in your decision. You've always been the one we could count on, but clearly, we were wrong. As of now, everything in our will is going to be. If you change your mind and want to help, the door is still open. That was it. No apology. No regret. Just another guilt trip, as if I was the one who turned my back on them. They didn't respond. What was the point? They'd made it clear where their loyalty was. And honestly, the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't even about the money. It was about the principle. My whole life, I'd been playing by the rules, doing the right thing. And for what? To be used and discarded the moment my brother screwed up again? B's attitude was just the icing on the cake. He reached out a few days later, not to apologize, but to complain. I heard from Mom and Dad that you're not helping. That's cold, man. I'm really struggling here. I stared at his message, feeling my blood boil. Struggling. There was that word again. Struggling to live in luxury while the rest of us were supposed to pick up the pieces. I didn't even bother replying. What was the point? He wouldn't get it. He never did. And he never will. A few more weeks went by. Silence from my parents. Silence from B. I kept waiting for the guilt to hit, for that familiar pang of doubt to creep in and make me wonder if I was being too harsh. But it never came. What came instead was clarity. A realization that I'd been enabling their behavior too. By always being the responsible one. By always stepping aside to let them help B. I was just as much a part of the problem. One day, out of the blue, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was lawyer. Apparently, my parents had already started the process of changing their will, cutting me out completely. The lawyer wasn't reaching out to smooth things over, though. He was calling because there was a complication. My grandparents' trust fund, the one they dipped into for B. It had stipulations. Legally, they weren't allowed to touch the money meant for me. The lawyer explained that I could take them to court, demand that the funds be repaid. It wouldn't be an easy process. But I had a case. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something. Vindication, maybe. The idea that I could finally hold them accountable, make them pay for what they'd done, was tempting. But then, as the lawyer kept talking, I realized something. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life fighting them. I didn't want to drag this mess through courtrooms and legal battles, constantly reliving every betrayal. I just wanted to be done with them. Thanks for letting me know, I told the lawyer. But I'm not interested. Let them keep it. I hung up, feeling lighter than I had in months. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe I was leaving money on the table. But at this point, it didn't matter. I wasn't going to let their greed and entitlement dictate my life any longer. They could keep their money, their twisted idea of family, and all the drama that came with it. I was done. And B, well, from what I've heard through mutual friends, things haven't been going so great for him. His debts are still piling up, and my parents are struggling to keep their own finances in order after bailing him out time and time again. Part of me feels bad for them. Part of me wants to reach out, to remind them that they brought this on themselves. But I won't. They made their choices. Now they'll have to live with them. As for me, I'm doing all right. I've got a steady job, a roof over my head, and the peace of knowing I don't owe anyone anything. And honestly, that's more valuable than any inheritance could ever be. So yeah, that's where things stand. I've walked away from my family, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's also the best decision I've ever made. Sometimes, blood doesn't make a family. Sometimes, it's the people who respect you, who stand by you, who see you for who you are, that matter the most. Anyway, that's my story. If your family ever tries to pull the same crap on you, do yourself a favor. Walk away. Trust me, you'll be better off.